Welcome to SEC Football Live, the College Football Playoff Expanded Edition, 12-team version. First round is here. Finally, it's here. Stephen Godfrey, Braden, Gall, of course, brought to you by ML Rose. 6 great locations all over Middle Tennessee and in the Tennessee and in the Nashville area. If you, of course, are hanging out with something that you need someplace to go and hang out on Saturday morning or Sunday morning before football games, drink specials, 2 for $1, great brunch menu. Check out one of those 6 great locations. Godfrey, how are you, sir?
Yeah, Friday night too. You could go That's happy hour in advance of the Friday night game.
I can't guarantee happy hours on Friday nights at bars in Nashville. That's not yet. I always do like the old dad thing where I walk in and I'm like, you got any happy hours? You got any specials? And they're like, it's Friday at 7:00. What are you talking about, asshole?
No, but if you are just totally exhausted in the wake of family or just the work week or whatever, I do highly recommend an ML Rose. Got the enclosed settings. I'm not talking about the building. I'm talking about like the little outdoor areas on Charlotte where you got the kids. You do the little croquet and golf or whatever. Nothing greater. Nothing greater than the ability to drink alcohol and eat food you didn't cook in public while your kids are somewhat preoccupied. Like you can see them and they're not causing a problem, but you and your significant other might actually be able to have a conversation for 10 minutes.
We have taken our daughters to lots of restaurants we probably should not have taken them to at the ages that they were in an effort to get them training camp reps, like August college football reps, to make sure they're ready for the playoff. We wanted to make sure that 6 and 8-year-old were ready for some place. Do you know how to act in public, honey? Behave yourself so that mom and dad can have fun, okay? No, ML Rose is great. It's fantastic. If you're watching the show and you want to get into the comment section, please do so. If you are seeing us on the Twitter machine, which is still a thing, Godfrey, make sure you hit retweet. Make sure you share that bad boy. Make sure you do that. If you're watching on Facebook, turn on the notifications on YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to talk about the games. We're going to get into the games. Obviously, we'll make some. I'm not really into predictions, but whatever. We'll talk about the games because what's going to be interesting to watch. But I wanted to ask you about some non matchup factors. Clemson's rushing defense is terrible and Texas loves to run the football. We can do that a little bit later. I wanted to talk about all this stuff surrounding this because it feels so new and so different for so many different reasons, not just the format, but we've got host, Big Ten fan fever dream, cold weather in Notre Dame, Happy Valley, and Columbus, Ohio, under 30 degrees, it looks like, for all 3 of them. So I want to lay out some factors here, and I want you to tell me, and I want us to work through which ones will be factors in which games and which ones play a bigger role and which ones maybe I'm just sort of inventing. So Number one is the weather. It's going to be fascinating. It's the first time we get to do this, and I think it's going to be really interesting. It affects one SEC team, but 3 of the big games this weekend. And then, of course, it's nice 63 and sunny in Austin, Texas. The layoff is fascinating to me because Texas and Clemson are the only 2 teams that did not get a 3rd week of break. They're the only 2 teams in the tournament that got 2 weeks of break. Everybody else is going to get more than that. And so I'm curious who's that benefit, who manages it well, which coaching staff will take advantage of that opportunity. I think pressure is a huge part of the game for Ohio State and Tennessee. I think it's a massive part of the game for James Franklin at Penn State. So I want to know about pressure. And then the calendar. And speaking of James Franklin, he's not wrong about any of his complaints this week, but he's definitely in his feelings about the calendar being as condensed and as FUBAR as it is, which, again, he is correct about. So the layoff, the time, which we've seen Nick Saban, Godfrey, take and turn his team into something different. I don't know if Texas and Clemson can do that. The weather, the pressure to win, the pressure of the situation, and, of course, the FUBAR calendar. Which one plays the biggest role this weekend? And which games do you want to go to with those factors?
The FUBAR calendar, I'll get that one out of the way because I wrote about this situation for the Washington Post. And it's funny, right as we were going live, I just glanced down and I got an alert. I feel like on this show, I do this the most. Some insane unhinged email rant, and it came into my Split Zone account, but I think that's what I've maybe via the Washington Post. People are actually angry at which to me, this is insane, at the backup quarterback for Penn State, even though his head coach very, very specifically said, hey, look, this is a product of the system. And by the way, all right, let's back up. Yes, it's overstacked.
Bo Prabula is the backup quarterback for Penn State, and he's entered the portal.
And And it was funny.
And not just a regular backup quarterback. Sorry to interrupt, Godfrey. Not just a
he has a 12 to 16 play a game package.
Yeah.
So if you haven't watched any Penn State, goal line sort of big, like running quarterback ish. There isn't. Yes. So he creates an immediate effect by his absence. This isn't just a talented and capable backup who knows the playbook who might have to come in on injury. Like he would be all those things. Yeah. Dreller was injured, but this is a loss for their offensive playbook specifically. So I will say this.
He also didn't have to do it, but that's neither here nor there.
I think he absolutely did. He has every consideration works for him to leave now in terms of everything from enrollment, the widest range of available destinations, going through practices. Like this stress should not be put on the player to then make these kinds of like Sophie's choices. It's completely messed up. Like I said, I wrote a whole article in the Washington Post about it. However, I don't know if that's going to have a tremendous impact on the playoff unless it has that one tremendous impact, which is that if Drew Aller gets hurt. This happened with Malik Murphy last year. It just didn't get any play because it ended up being ultimately a non-issue. I don't think anyone.
Well, they had Arch. That's the other.
Like his absence was not like the reason that Texas lost to Washington in the Sugar. So
right. No, I don't want to get into too deep of a debate about it.
No.
You can transfer up until 5 days after your team's last game, so you can still transfer after Penn State's game. It's more about like kids should not be made to have to deal with this situation. Sure. And I totally agree with that. But at the end of the day, if it's the worst of like bad choices, he still could have played for his team in the playoff this weekend. Now, next weekend, and you put off the decision 22 days, like that's when it starts to get like you're going to lose your opportunity to get a job potentially. But I get what you're saying. The kids should not be put into this position, but that's ultimately the calendar. And because we have NFL free agency, NFL draft, NFL coaching carousel, NFL, everything all at one time, playoffs, everything, silly seasons all at the same time in college football.
Yeah.
I was talking and you can check out my conversation. I think it was with Sam Kahn of The Athletic, who was on this show this week on the YouTube page and on the podcast feed, who says this is all about stability, which coach, and this is where he was talking about Texas and Steve Sarkisian. It's who has the ability to delegate the best and who has the ability to manage, who trusts his people the most, and like the CEO plus the game plan plus the roster management, who has all of that already in place to manage.
Okay.
I think that's his theory. I think there's probably some truth to that
on Texas Clemson specifically, or
just like for anybody in it, because he wrote a big piece about Belichick coming into North Carolina and sort of all these coaches and what they have to deal with from a roster management standpoint, which again is the calendar here. I think James Franklin has he's been there a long time and is a very good CEO, but I don't know if he's got a stable coaching staff. I think Josh Heupel, Kirby Smart, and Steve Sarkisian do. I think Ryan Day's got a lot of pieces in place to manage this, frankly, as well. So I don't know. What's your thought on who manages the calendar the best?
Obviously, look, we don't know because we're going through something for the first time. I think experience always lends itself to success in any uncertain environment in the modern game. So it was no shock to anyone who understood the industry that Alabama and Ohio State ended up in the national championship in the COVID season because of the sheer volume of uncertainty. You had two really stable rosters, two really talented rosters, two systems already in place, two basically, I don't want to say certainties, but kind of close to it in a totally uncertain environment. And you saw more unstable rosters or cultures or staffs kind of break apart down the stretch. Look, it was weird, dude. Sometimes you didn't know who you're playing. You change the opponent, right. All that stuff. We are not dealing with that level of uncertainty. I do think we are dealing with a level of unknown in it's how do you manage conditioning? How much of your hand are you showing if you have anything that you have not yet exhausted? That's one thing that I don't think has been brought up a ton.
To me, that's the layoff like thing. What new wrinkles are you bringing to the table, a la Alabama, Georgia, in the beginning when we said, look, neither of these two teams have shown each other anything. Then right. they got there and all of a sudden they're throwing the ball out of zero, with zero backfield for Alabama, and that really screwed up Georgia. I don't know. We have no clue how Josh Heupel what he does on 2 weeks to prepare. with a quarterback who's, frankly, the offense for Tennessee has not been that great this year. They've under 6 yards of play in every SEC game except for Vanderbilt. That's the thing. I'd kind of trust Sarkisian. We saw a little bit of it last year. I certainly trust Kirby. Dabo's been around a long time. Like, say what you want, make jokes all you want to, but that's an experienced program with veteran pieces and a veteran coaching staff that's been in this situation before. Does that mean they handle it great? I don't know.
Well, I think in that game's case, I think it's more of a talent discrepancy. I think Dabo could handle it really well, but I also think, all things being equal, you should see Texas function at a higher level. I said this on the show when the bracket was revealed. I've said this every chance I could. We have to account for a percentage of illogical outcome. Okay, so I think you're onto something to at least grasp at. Okay, Clemson, Texas, talent deficiency, more hype team, better star-rated team, whatever. Math tells us one or two of these games is going to be inexplicable by our standards. So the idea of the wily veteran coaching staff somehow gaining an edge, I would say this. I think
I don't trust that particular coach. I don't trust that particular coach to do a great job of it, but
Well, yeah. And I mean, Texas in the postseason is a sort of entity unto itself, not unlike Penn State, or just big game situation, I should say, not so much postseason. It's a little different than it is in the pros. Weather is going to be fun to talk about. I don't necessarily know if it will be impactful because other than SMU in a colder environment, I think Tennessee's going to be fine going into Ohio State. I think Indiana they are staying in the state to play their road game. So that'll be fun for us to talk about. I don't know if it will necessarily be impactful.
Here's my theory on that one, which is sort of totally it's totally inverted. I think of the 12 teams, 3 of the 4 that have the biggest question marks around their kicker are actually Penn State, Notre Dame, and Ohio State. The 3 teams playing at home in cold weather situations. Now, right now on the forecast, taping live on a Wednesday, the snow looks like it's going to be through the area in Happy Valley by Friday night, so it doesn't look like there'll be snow potentially. But if there is any precipitation, wind, or snow, if you've had an injured, I think is it Notre Dame's kicker, right, that injured his groin and came back and hasn't been very good since then. You got Ohio State's kicker missed twice against Michigan, and you got Penn State's kicker they don't trust either. Those 3 are questions. Where you mentioned SMU. SMU's got a guy who can bang through like 56 yarders whenever he wants to in Rodgers. So be careful with the kickers in those 3 games with weather. That would be my angle there.
There is a mixture of forecasts I've already pulled up for Happy Valley. The thing is, though, we need to clarify to the audience too, even if it's as late as going into 3 or 4 a.m. on Saturday morning,
it'll be fine.
The level of precipitation you're talking about in central Pennsylvania is shrugged at. So
this is not Auburn, Alabama, where
now the SMU fans visiting town, they might, the PJs coming into the Harrisonburg airport might feel a certain kind of way about this. But I mean, there's a pretty significant front affecting all 3 of these games that's sort of moving diagonally across, through the Midwest up to the Northeast.
I was looking at tickets to go to the Tennessee game. They're less than $200 a game, and I was like, honey, let's go. And she's like, she immediately pulls up her weather app and is like, nope.
I talked to
my wife's like, nope, not going.
Will Bowling here in Nashville, the radio host, he said I was talking to him and he said it's like 130s ish to be in the upper bowl, which is not terrible. It's not a terrible. It's a huge stadium. I think for Tennessee fans, they'll probably kind of shrug at that because they're used to it. But yeah, you could go. Now I will say this. I have been to Columbus in cold weather and in November.
It's kind of gross.
No, it was not so much that. It's that if you're in that upper bowl, you're going to get a level of like wind shear and elevate. Like, it's not going to be fun.
So I've been to the stadium too. The tickets I was looking at were they're not lower bowl, they're not upper bowl, they're not club seats, but there's this one thin little layer in the horseshoe that sort of has a cover. And I'm like, and for like $210, you can get into the first ever playoff game at Ohio Stadium and be covered. And I'm going like, what are we? It's like $600 for Notre Dame, Indiana tickets. Like it's like $5.50 for those.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a volume play, but also think about the Notre Dame demand too, or sorry, the Indiana demand too, because of the the unprecedented nature of the fact we're even mentioning this.
I do agree with you that weather is more of a non-football conversation. It's more about us as fans and the Big Ten SEC thing that's been talked about for 100 years, and it's just sort of a fun like side note. I don't think it plays a huge role. I think the calendar plays somewhat of a role because they're all distracted, but it seems like if anybody, James Franklin is the most focused on it, but that's sort of the way he functions anyway, with like rabbit ears the size of like, the Empire State Building. I think the layoff is interesting. I think it depends on, I think Kirby Smart will have lots of stuff up his sleeve because of this. I think Sarkisian is going to be great at this. I don't know what Heupel can do. I don't know what Ryan Day, we've seen him lose to Michigan and then play like the best game his team has ever played against Georgia in what really was the national championship game in a semifinal a couple of years ago. So Ryan Day's been proof that he can do this as well. It's the pressure one that I think is interesting because I think it's more game flow dependent. If Quinn Ewers throws a couple interceptions in the first half, the pressure is going to mount quickly. If Clemson, and you by the way, you mentioned the chaos factor. You said you and I talked about this on our last episode about Arizona State sort of living and dying with turnover margin. Clemson's not that much different. Clemson and Arizona State are two of the top 5 teams in the country in turnovers, giveaways. Texas has more turnovers than Clemson and Arizona State combined, which is a concern when your quarterback occasionally loses his brain during football games.
How fast do they rotate out? If that's, I mean, like your tolerance level would have to honestly be like one bad turnover, right? Like one, and I'm not talking about deflect pass. I'm not talking about 50-50 or I'm talking. If there is a, how do we say the scientific
a Will Levis
brain fart,
a Will Levis game.
if there's just one of those,
or a Kirk Cousins game.
Kirk's.
Sorry, man.
Kirk is no. I'm excited. It's Penix time, baby. If there is a decision based turnover early on, you got more. You got more than a package with Arch. I know they use him as a package quarterback, basically. Like that was evident against Georgia, but one wonders. And I understand he did not display a total command necessarily of the entire offense, the entire downfield attack when he went in. I want to say he turned the ball over against ULM. Arch did. When he started after the first injury this season.
But that was the plan. Like go out there and learn on the fly and
when we talk, I remember that week we talked about it. It's like get all of your kinks out, get all the mess out, like get the game rep experience. I just don't know if Arch is in a place where it's a 50-50 situation and saying like, all right, Quinn, bad turnover.
I think it has to be 2. I think it would have to be 2. And they'd have to be
if it's 2,
I think it would have to be 2.
We're looking at everything Clemson. If it's 2, and with Sark's history of rotating guys back in, that's a Clemson upset recipe. That's what you want.
I agree.
I mean, that's it.
Now the blue chip factor, right? The blue chip ratio or whatever for Clemson, top 10 in the country, ahead of teams like Tennessee and Penn State and some of the other teams in the playoff. The pressure factor, I think, is also it benefits Tennessee. I don't think Tennessee is under a lot of pressure outside of like normal football pressure.
They're not.
They're not under any pressure. They go up there and lose a close game. They come back. Tennessee fans are going to be bummed for a little while, and then they're going to say, look, this was a great season. Nico got his first season under center. Blah, 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 blah. Heupel proved he's good enough. He can rebound. They've evolved and adapted their system to be a power football team with a defense, something we didn't know Josh Heupel, if he could do that, and he did it, obviously very well this year. And if it's a slow start for Ohio State, the pressure, the reason those tickets, in my opinion, one of the reasons, outside of a variety of other things, is that there's a chunk of Ohio State fans that are rooting for them to lose at some point during the bracket. They don't want Ohio State to win a championship because they're going to keep Ryan Day, and then they got to worry about the Michigan thing. I
think there's a fatigue. I think there's a fatigue right now based off of what happened in that stadium against the rival. I don't know if the ticket prices are reflecting that so much as it's time of year.
They've traveled to a lot of road neutral site games over the years.
Yeah. And I mean, they are a very wait and see kind of culture. Also, this is
first ever playoff game. You're hosting the SEC team.
This is something big stuff. I mean, first off, ticket prices are very deceptive because the way they're purchased and how they appear on the third party market, it's not a 1-to-1 comp. I mean, there are a lot of Ohio State fans who are not in the 2.5 hour radius of Columbus who are probably going to make a decision and say, well, they are 7.5, 8-point favorites. The defense is not the problem. They could easily shut Tennessee down, muck it up in the cold weather. And then, by the way, now I'm an Ohio State fan.
It's boring. It's ugly.
I live in Philadelphia. I live in Memphis. Live wherever. I'm going to fly to the Rose Bowl. I'm going to jack those. Those are the tickets that I'm going to buy. And I agree. That's the way the Midwest thinks.
I agree. It's the asking the fan bases to travel 4 or 5 times if you're going to win a championship. It's sort of the. I do think there's about 10 to 15% of the fan base that's just like so frustrated with Ryan Day that that they're not going to go. But I don't think it's a big number. I think it's a small number.
The Sugar Bowl better hope Notre Dame wins. Not the Sugar Bowl. I'm saying gets there because Georgia has zero incentive.
To sell tickets.
To sell those tickets aggressively.
Indiana, Georgia,
they're leading the neutral site fatigue right now.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. I agree with you on that. But I do think if they come out slow on offense and Tennessee scores the way they did in the Georgia game, where it started well for Tennessee and then Georgia just sort of flipped a switch and obliterated them, which is totally possible. Ohio State could do that. I think the pressure, people get real puckered up in that stadium real fast if they're down 10-0, and the same old problems exist. Because while I agree, Ohio State. Here's the thing, SEC Tennessee people. Ohio State is better by like one player in almost every position group. Yes. Like they have Caleb Downs, Tennessee does not. They have Jeremiah Smith as a number 2 receiver, Tennessee does not. They have a second All-American running back, Tennessee has Dylan Sampson. Like the offensive line's probably better for Tennessee, and I think the quarterback is better for Tennessee if he plays well. And I think, I think Ohio State is just better. They have 5 or 6 NFL players on offense that Tennessee does not have. And so,
yes, none of the conversation would be framed this way if they had just simply had one more successful scoring drive in an otherwise horrifically called game against Michigan. I'm serious.
No,
conversation would be totally different.
They lost to Michigan out of pure stubbornness. That's all that was.
I heard a good theory I was on Kings of the North this week, and they were like, that's the Ohio-based Midwestern Big Ten show, and I'd never thought of this before, but there might be something that I don't know if exists in the SEC where, and if it did, maybe it was Alabama and Georgia, where Ohio State felt it necessary to out Michigan, which is super stupid.
It was stubborn.
If that's true, even by a percentage.
How else do you explain the game plan?
You are the program renowned for your pro-development personnel culture. Out-talent them. Who cares how you cut it up? Who cares?
How has Ohio State won 11 Big Ten championships in the last 15 years? Speed.
You don't have to say, all right, well, we're going to off-tackle you 20 times more than you off-tackled us last year.
This is why I'm picking Ohio State in the game, not to get to that element, but I think Tennessee's going to play well. I think it's very tight. I think it's very low scoring. These teams, and I threw this out. I can't remember if it was on Twitter or Blue Sky. I don't remember. Go to Elmo Rose, everybody. Basically, an underrated stat going into these types of games are opponent red zone opportunities. Like, how many times do you actually even give the other team a chance to get into your scoring territory? It's not one that we talk about a lot. It's not a super fancy stat, advanced metric kind of deal. But I looked at it, and part of the reason I was sort of attracted to it was the top 5 teams in the country in not allowing red zone trips: Texas, Indiana, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Penn State. The 5 teams that allow the fewest trips into the red zone are in the playoff. And 4 of them are favored. 3 of them all 4 of them are at home. Indiana's the other one. Tennessee's another one that's top 20, allowing less than 3 trips into the red zone per game. Everybody else is way outside the top 50. Like, Georgia's not in that group. Clemson's not in that group. Arizona State's certainly not in that group. So what's interesting to me is we're having 2 games in which we have 2 of those teams on both sides of the ball. And Ohio State, Tennessee is one of them. 2 teams that do not allow trips into the red zone, 2 great defensive lines, 2 offensive lines that can get after, don't always protect the quarterback, and 2 quarterbacks that frankly have had moments of football this year. I think it's very similar, and I think it's a very close game at the end. But I think Ohio State's one guy, Jeremiah Smith, Caleb Downs, whoever it might be, their one extra guy is what wins the game.
I don't judge quality based off of like a Vegas spread by any stretch, but I would say that, I mean, you have Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State as favorites, all living in that 7 to 8 point range. And yet I feel like this is not scientific. I can't show my work. The heavyweight fight, the compelling, like the good piece of viewership where you would want to put 3 hours and say, damn, that was good, is Tennessee, Ohio State.
Yeah.
And then I feel like there's a significant, not dramatic, significant step below for the other 3 games. I have probably just been in the media cycle because I am media of talking myself into Clemson. So, but earlier, when we started the week, I was like, that's a smash. Like, I think Texas might actually just like get in there and really bully them around. And then I still feel the same way about Notre Dame. And Penn State's a little bit more of sort of my arms are crossed, kind of huffy. Like, all right, you better you kind of show me something.
Talk about pressure. James Franklin loses that game. Woof. Woof.
It's weird because Ryan Day has sucked up so much of that oxygen.
Brian Day's a better coach than James Franklin.
But what do you do at that point if you're Penn State?
Nothing.
I've said this.
Penn State got the entire playoff expanded just for James Franklin. And here he is. He made it.
I've heard a version of that joke like 3 times this week, and it's not wrong.
Whose is better? Whose is best?
Yours is pretty good. Yours is pretty good.
Damn.
It's just funny because I believe that I know a level of chaos exists in any permutation of college football. You cannot hide. You cannot guard against it. So at some point, something's going to happen against logic. That being said, you took the team with the marquee opponent problem and you gave them something close to like the golden path on the game board. Close to it. Although I can talk myself into Boise
upsetting them. I know.
Not just so much of a consistent run game. Like at this point, it's like, oh yeah, we know what you're gonna do, and Boise's been like, yeah, you know what we're gonna do.
We'll get there next week. By the way, we'll have a show on Monday next week, so we'll have one out early for you guys to kind of react. But I think my concern about Boise State, Penn State is just like what else does Boise have, and that's where these kinds of games force you to be outside of your comfort zone. The coaches that are outside of their comfort zone and can function that way productively are the ones who do the best job. And I just don't know if they've got the quarterback and the passing attack to balance out Ashton Genty. But that's a story for maybe next week's show. The Clemson Texas thing, like if you look at the way Texas plays the game, I mean, I know Cade Klubnik. I went to Westlake High School too. Okay, and I'm not even kidding about that. I went to Westlake High School for 1 year. Drew Brees was the quarterback, and Cade Klubnik comes back to Austin. Go Saints. He comes back to Austin. You got the whole deal, like it's storybook this, and they somehow figure out a way with their worst team in 10 years to win a conference championship and get into the 12-team playoff. I just think they're playing so loose that I think Clemson could be dangerous. But if Texas's defensive, like their secondary is better than last year. They lost 2 defensive tackles to the NFL, and their defensive front is just as good as it was last year. That coaching staff has done a brilliant job on that side of the ball. As long as Quinn Ewers doesn't screw it up, I just don't see Clemson pulling the upset, even though the point spread's the biggest. I can't talk myself into it.
We do need to acknowledge this is a real thing in the media, and it starts to happen this time of year, and it also starts to crop up when you're like prognosticated out in late August, where you're just like, you're like, okay, I can't devil's advocate here. Like, yeah, three of these should be, I would say, not lopsided, but decisive. And then one I feel like is an even fight that Ohio State wins by a possession or a score. Like,
for some reason, I think Indiana's going to play better than people think. But here's something I'm to your point about Georgia sort of being apathetic about the whole journey here to some degree from a neutral site ticket sales standpoint. The amount of people that are automatically picking Notre Dame to beat both Indiana and Georgia is reaching a concerning level if you're a Notre Dame fan.
They live there. I mean, who knows? Like,
Georgia is 4-0 against teams in the tournament. Their only losses are to teams that just barely missed the tournament. They have played 6 top 15 teams and won 4 of them. I don't love the fact that Georgia might be the team that wins the whole thing. And I don't love the fact that this is even a good enough Georgia team to be considered great Georgia football. But picking Notre Dame, like everyone I'm seeing is picking Notre Dame to not only beat Indiana, but to also beat Georgia. And I don't get that.
I would maybe it's time for the an awareness PSA, because this show is sort of geared towards people who may not be watching a ton of Notre Dame inventory.
Keep vamping about Indiana Notre Dame. I'm gonna do my wardrobe change right now. So go ahead.
So I would say this: the entire time that we have had, or like this show has existed, or really like in the playoff era, let's just use the playoff era and some of the BCS, the knock on Notre Dame and the knock on Oregon has been like trench specific. It's been offensive lineman, it's been defensive lineman. And as someone who was at that 2014 national championship, that was supposed to be Oregon's season, who's currently the number 1 seed in this whole thing, undefeated, right?
That was supposed to be a Lane Kiffin versus Marcus Mariota game.
Yeah, exactly. And so there we go. Oh, hey, check this out. We didn't plan this. Look.
If you watch it on YouTube.
An Indiana fan sent me these. They're like
the Marlboro man T-shirt, Kirk Security T-shirt is one of my favorite possessions.
Google me.
IU Hoosiers in the upset. Let's go.
Right, now I'm gonna talk all over that. Notre Dame and Oregon were tagged correctly so. If anyone who might have tuned into the 2012 BCS National Championship, or Brian Kelly's foray into the college football playoff, or the 2014 college football playoff final, or Oregon and Notre Dame were very, very different stories. Oregon was this brand new, weird disruptor in the market with the uniforms and the Nike and all this. But you got to remember, Mariota riding the Heisman, they're going to change college football. Everything's going to be different now. Spaceship in the woods in Oregon. And they ran into an NFL caliber set of lines in Ohio State. And it nullified so much of what Oregon wanted to do. And it really defined Oregon against, quote unquote, the big boys. Notre Dame, a much clearer story. They were under Kelly convinced that college football was the cesspool of cheating, kind of a very Michigan mindset, because here's the real thing. They couldn't recruit as well as these other brands. And we have this great, amazing referendum, Braden, that doesn't ever really pop up in real life, where it's so clear and it's going to be so telling, which is Brian Kelly said, it's not me, it's Notre Dame. And Marcus Freeman said, it's not Notre Dame, it's you, my guy. And then Brian Kelly goes to the SEC and says, if you give me the SEC, I will be a national championship coach. And guess what?
He's getting there. We
got people picking Notre Dame to win a playoff that over LSU Georgia. Ain't in.
Over Georgia.
Because, to bring it all back around, NIU was week 2. It was a long time ago. And everything that's been put in front of Notre Dame since, with the exception of, Lincoln got some points in on him. That was maybe as risky as things looked. The defense has been great. The line play has been great. What they have travels well. It's not especially sexy, but the way this team is built, even after an upset, I'm not picking them to win a national championship.
Neither of them have been Indiana and Notre Dame. Neither of them have been challenged the way Georgia has.
But it's just funny to me this year that Notre Dame is the sexy pick and Oregon is the overall undefeated number 1. And they are very, for SEC fans, they are very different than what you might have been used to.
That's fair. I think the irony of that 2014, I was at the Sugar Bowl, the Ohio State-Alabama game. That was the first playoff game, kind of the first upset, really. 4 seed Urban Meyer beats the 1 seed. Blake Sims, by the way, the quarterback for Alabama, converted running back. The irony that Chip Kelly,
sorry, I showed in that game.
I agree. The irony that Chip Kelly is going to change the game of college football with a dynamic rushing attack, who loses to Ohio State and is now supposed to save Ryan Day's job at Ohio State 10 years later, is just too juicy for me to pass up commenting on. I think that's hilarious and fascinating. Look, Indiana has so much intrigue as a nerdy college football fan. I love their system on offense. Curtis Rourke is a great story. They got weapons all over the place. The offensive line got punked against Ohio State, and they're going to have a tough time against Indiana. I love that it's a Friday night. I do, because I don't do much on Friday nights. I hang out with my kids, and I get to, as soon as they go to bed, we had a really great Friday night schedule, I think, this year. It was just turned out to be good games outside of that Oregon-Purdue game. And so I'm excited about getting to watch that one on a Friday night. I think it's going to be cold and awesome. State of Indiana. I got lots of tons of Indiana people, Godfrey. I don't know if you noticed this. in our community in Nashville. There's the reason I have this Kurt Signetti shirt on.
Yeah, we discussed it on this show because it's just the factor of Indiana turning out a lot of like business and media grads, and then turning around and going be like, I don't know if I want to be in Chicago anymore.
No,
and
they all want to come to Nashville. Yeah,
the rest of damn Chicago, they move here.
Yeah, there's
home.
The amount of Indiana and Purdue grads in my kids' daycare and elementary school is stunning.
There's 2 Purdue flags between my office and my house, and they're not that far away from each other in Nashville. And there's Michigan State. Yeah, like it's a Big Ten invasion.
I'm not rooting for any one team in any of these 4 games outside of my alma mater. I guess I'll be rooting for them. But like I am rooting for Indiana because of our friendships, like all in the community here. All my kids' friends, my friends, like go Hoosiers, man. And I do think Notre Dame, Oregon would be a fantastic national championship game. If both of them are good enough to get there, they will have proven it. I think the other thing, and this is just a random observation here, Godfrey, and I don't know if it means the playoff format is already like pseudo successful.
Okay.
But maybe it's just a function of this year, function of roster management tweaks and changes, the function of sort of the sport being in turmoil and the transit nature of like how we're supposed to execute and be successful as a coach. The fact that I could make the case for 4 or 5 or even 6 teams to win the whole thing, the fact that I could line up 5 or 6 different matchups in the national championship game, and you'd be like, yeah, I could see that. I could see Texas, Georgia part 3. I could see Notre Dame. I could see Penn State making it. I could see Texas making it. I could see Ohio State making it. I could see Oregon making it. And Tennessee's where I might draw the line. I don't know if they can win against Ohio State and Oregon in back-to-back games. But I would not be surprised by a large number.
If they did, they'd be the favorite after that.
Right. But like, it's not crazy to think that they could do that. I think that one's the most far-fetched. But
it's a lot.
There's a lot of options. Like, do you have, like, when you saw the bracket and today, you've had 2 weeks to look at this. Do you really have normally in BCS games or even in 14 playoffs, I felt pretty convicted about what I thought was going to happen. Hey, I think Alabama's going to beat this team, or I think Clemson's going to beat that team, or 2019 LSU. We just don't have that team. So I don't know if that's a function of the bracket or a function of the year. It might be both.
My problem is I can't settle on the chaos I know is about to occur. I'm not saying like every lower seeded team is going to win. I'm saying that obviously we can commit to a certain percentage of that definitely happening because that's what happens in our sport. So the reason why I've had a tough time with the bracket is because can I talk myself into SMU? Like, can I really talk myself into SMU? Can I talk myself into Indiana?
I think Indiana's got a better chance than SMU does.
Like, can I talk myself into Clemson? And it's tough there. And then also the seeding has created this really angry situation where people are just incensed that Arizona State and Boise have a bye. It
doesn't make linear sense, Godfrey.
I don't care about that.
I do.
I think that if I follow the trend that college football sets without preference or opinion or feelings, it will feature weirdness and end with a favorite. So you think about the 2007 season that everybody talks about. You think about all the weird things that we celebrate, and then if you just were to look at a list of national champions or even national championship game participants, it's pretty chalky. Like it's
a college basketball tournament, is what it is.
Yeah, Clemson. Clemson was the story at the national championship level. And after a while, we had to come around and realize, like, okay, well, this is a pseudo SEC program. It's incredibly well funded. They're recruiting as aggressively as any other power. They're not Cinderella.
No,
they just weren't a thing for 20 or 30 years, which can happen in the sport. So
no, the basketball tournament. The reason the basketball tournament is successful is that it gives you both. It gives you Cinderella in the first 2 rounds, maybe the first weekend and a half, and then in the Final Four, TV ratings will tell you that the public does not want Cinderella there. They want the best programs with the biggest players and the bigggot stars playing for a championship.
No, the prize fight. I mean, the prize fight would be good. The prize fight of Oregon, Georgia would be good.
Great.
Not complaining.
Notre Dame, Texas. Yeah,
Georgia might not have a quarterback, so we don't know. And if it's Oregon, Notre Dame, then it will continue to push an existential crisis about the SEC that I don't know is entirely well founded. But I do think part of the reason that we can celebrate this parity is less about the bracket and just more about the inability for college football to catch up with itself and the portal and everything else and the way that rosters are constructed right now, it's harder to have a definitive edge. And I think that's what we're seeing more than anything else.
Which I think is good for the game in the short term, writ large. We'll see if it stabilizes and James Franklin gets his wish and there's a Commissioner Bill Connolly.
Let me tell you something. If the SEC loses big here, they will force through changes. I'm not sure exactly which, but the seeding, I think, is going to be the first that changes. And then after that, the demand on the auto bid is coming anyway. So enjoy this because I think this is going to be the first and last of its kind anyway.
Well, I think next year it'll be the same, and then they'll change it all for the following year. But that's neither here nor there. I think the seeding, you already reward the teams. We've already been through this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. The seeding is stupid. You're rewarding a team by giving them an automatic bid. You don't need to give them another reward by hurting Oregon. Like Texas doesn't need to play teams 16 and 12 in the first 2 rounds of the tournament.
I like reseeding. I would be fine if we kept everything the same and just reseeded. That would be, I think.
What do you mean? Like after the first round?
Mm-hmm. There's no reason to lock in.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't think.
Like even so for those of you
the NFL does that.
So for those of you who don't know this, like they've locked the next round somewhat geographically by favorite. So Oregon, I was about to say Pac-12, Big Ten. They get the Rose Bowl. They're on the West Coast. Boise's in the Fiesta. Georgia's in the Sugar. This all makes sense. The only outlier there is that they have to send Arizona to the Peach, Arizona State, because they're the 4 seed, so they're the lowest of the favorites.
Why wouldn't Georgia want the Peach Bowl?
The SEC, it's not up to Georgia.
Oh,
isn't that stupid?
Seems
Georgia doesn't get to pick. The SEC doesn't want Georgia to be in the Peach Bowl, mainly because they just had the SEC championship there, and that Georgia's played in that friggin' stadium like 10 times.
And they would play there in the national championship game if they got there.
Exactly. The better question to ask Braden is, why is the Peach Bowl involved in that building anyway?
Oh, that's there's an easy answer. They all play golf together.
Money.
Okay. They're all golfing buddies at the same
club. So if we played this out, let me see if you would object to any of this. I need you to pick. So you're going to pick Indiana as an upset.
Well,
do you want to chalk the rest?
So
just hypothetically, no. I
know. First, I want to say automatic bids get you in, then seed 1 through 12. So Oregon doesn't get screwed by having to play seeds like 4 and 5.
Hang on.
That's number one.
All we have to do is I think all we have to do is change reseeding, because then if Indiana were to upset Notre Dame and the rest chalked, Indiana would go to Oregon, which feels fine. Okay. And then you have Penn State, Ohio State, and Texas winning.
But then why would Penn State be ranked ahead of Ohio State? That's what's pissing me off. Anyway, keep going. They beat them head to head. Anyway, carry on.
I mean, that one sucks. Don't lose to Michigan. Sorry. And you have to, and no one is ever going to de-emphasize. As someone who's at those conference championship games, that's another thing that's going to happen in the offseason. They've got to retrench and figure out, because they lost a bunch of money there. So Penn State got rewarded more for going to a conference championship game than they were dinged losing to Ohio State. And the corporate arm of this operation is kind of always just going to feel that way. I mean, I'm not defending it. I'm just telling that it is believing or saying.
I got you.
So that you would take Ohio State at the 8, and you wouldn't. I'll put it this way: in any permutation that I can create right now, Oregon would get Indiana, which feels like, because that was the upset win.
Okay.
And then any possible seeding after that, Penn State going to Georgia, or they would be the lowest seed would be Ohio State going to Georgia.
That's ridiculous. But that's a function of the pre-seeding.
That's losing. I'm sorry. That's less about this function. It's less about this bracket. It's a hell of a lot more with don't lose to Michigan, because you wouldn't be the 8 seed if you didn't lose to Michigan. You would have been in Penn State seed, and then Penn State.
Don't arbitrarily move conference championships up in the rankings 10 spots based on geography from 100 years ago. That's so stupid.
Conference championships up in what?
You've moved. Okay.
What do you mean?
I don't want to talk about this, but
I don't understand what you're saying.
The seeding is the problem, not the rankings. The rankings are totally fine. Like, I disagree with Penn State and Ohio State, because I think Ohio State's better because they beat them. And that's it. Same record. Ohio State belongs ahead of them. Whatever. That's my personal opinion. But don't move team 12 to team 4, because that creates a non-linear, screwed up path for everybody. It hurts Texas. It actually helps Texas. I should take that back. It hurts Tennessee. It hurts Ohio State. It hurts Oregon. All teams that accomplish too much to be hurt by an arbitrary rule, because Arizona State happened to be geographically located in a Pac-12, now Big 12 footprint, and because they want a geographic group of teams, they all of a sudden.
That's not the reason why.
No, they deserve the auto bid. They don't.
Do you know who set all this up?
12-4.
The Big Ten and the SEC set all this up, and now people are furious that the Big 12 champion got a bye.
I am not furious. The Big Ten champion deserves the bye.
Big 12 champion.
No, I'm not furious. This was entirely predictable. Like, this was 18 months ago. I was like, why are we reseeding? Like, why don't we just
set these rules up? But no, what I'm saying is that the people whose fan bases are pissed right now in the Big Ten and the SEC, they're the ones who did this. The Big 12 and the ACC were clinging to life and participation in this damn thing. And the Mountain West, it's not like the Mountain West had any clout.
They had equal voting power at the time, and that's why they
Oh my God.
Blah, 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 blah.
No, they don't have equal voting power.
No. It's equal voting power like a backbencher in a Republican or Democratic Congress. Like, backbenchers have to vote with the caucus.
If you think the Big 12 and the ACC have equal power in anything compared to the other
two. I didn't say that. I said they all had the same number of votes, is what I said when they decided this stuff.
The influence of the leagues, I will say, whatever is the other thing is this: everything we've talked about the last 5 to 10 minutes is either confirmed or irrelevant once you get past the quarters, and then I think they will review that data accordingly. So in other words, you're mad about Arizona State or Boise, you damn sure better cheer for them to lose. Otherwise, it's just going to be they'll confirm it.
And on its surface, I am not mad about Arizona State or Boise State. Like, I'm glad that they're in the tournament. I think they're great teams. They had great seasons. Like, I'm all for that. I'm mad for Oregon, and I am mad.
Oregon's going to be fine.
I hear you, but they got Oregon, best team in the country, undefeated season, and their reward is playing, my opinion, teams 4 and 5, teams 4 or 5 in the rankings. Texas doesn't win its conference championship, loses twice, and doesn't play a single team in the top 10. Like, that seems insane to me.
If Texas comes out of that side and never sees Oregon in the process, that will be a major conversation. I don't think that's going to happen.
They can get to Oregon and not have played a top 10 team while Oregon has a tougher path. That's insane to me. That's insane. Anyway, I've already spent 2 weeks talking about this.
Georgia could easily also play Indiana and Boise or SMU in succession and then just sleepwalk into a title game.
So exactly. To me, that's insane that the 2 and the 1 the 2 has an easier path than the 1. That's insane to me. But anyway, here's my last thought on Texas.
That when you say it that way,
this is what I'm saying.
It clicks better when it's rewarding the 1, rewarding the 2.
The 5 seed has been rewarded for losing its conference championship game in this path.
Louis and Chad is all over this talking about how they should mimic the basketball format. I'm not opposed to that at all. The only issue there is that it's just there's too much fiefdom stuff going on. Well, if anyone proposed a plan, they would get shot down because of a special interest.
I hear you, but the plan is very simple. You get in because the automatic bid, you seed 1 through 12 based on merit. That's it. It's just like the basketball tournament. It's exactly the same as the basketball tournament. You get into the tournament by winning an automatic bid or an at-large bid. You get in, you become in the pool of teams, and then 1 through 68, you get seeded 1 through 68. No problems there. All right, I want to go back to games here. I want to talk about games. Okay. So the one thing that stays in my mind, and you can kind of like tell me if I'm crazy on this or not. The thing that sticks in my mind about the Texas and Georgia championship game was how insanely physical it was. And if Texas is going to play with that level of physicality, they knocked out 2 Georgia quarterbacks in that game. If they're going to play with that kind of physicality, I have a hard time picking against Georgia and Texas not playing part 3. I think Oregon's a better team, but that type of physicality and defense plays very well in a football tournament.
Are you talking about predicting it or wanting to see it?
No, predicting it, not wanting to see it necessarily. I would prefer probably Oregon versus either Georgia, Penn State.
I didn't find the SEC championship game entertaining or watchable.
I liked it, but
it was rock fighty and homery.
But the physicality of it was nuts. There are just not many teams that could play that level of physicality, and I think that's the issue for Clemson in this particular matchup. Is they're going to have to match the physicality. Arizona State, they're going to have to match the physicality, and then if Texas plays Oregon, they're going to have to match the physicality. I think Oregon's much tougher than people think when it comes to sort of like the tropes and the narratives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier.
Way more physical than people think. But if Texas ends up in the national championship game or wins the whole thing, it will be because of their physicality and their defense and their offensive scheme and Quinn Ewers not making a mistake. But the way they thumped Georgia is not something that happens to Georgia very often. And I know they didn't win that game, but that was like that is what wins in college football, like in football playoff games, is this low scoring, I can stop you anytime I want to kind of thing. And
Notre Dame against the backup Georgia quarterback.
Yeah,
I like it.
I think it's hilarious that Texas and Georgia could play in a third time in the national championship game, and it might be Arch Manning versus Gunnar Stockton to start the game.
I have a hard time seeing both of them through. If that happened, that happened, the league would be able to beat its chest in a way previously just unthinkable.
No, I don't want to see that, by the way. Georgia is the most boring thing in this whole story.
Yeah, and
Georgia Clemson is the most boring thing.
I'm broken again. Picking, prognosticating, analyzing. I didn't report much this year in that way, but like everything I've done where it's like Georgia should work because of this, Georgia doesn't work because of it. They're here. They are and I say this as like a sign of respect. They are a nuisance-based defense that is still capable of, like, you're talking about intangible things that you can qualify on a podcast. Wherewithal, the ability to hang in games that they otherwise crap away. I think Georgia's masterful at that after Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, I feel like, came down to a coin flip style ending, but their ability to come back in that game, it's not the first time that they've done that this season. They can be dominant sometimes, but I'm actually now more impressed. God, I hate saying this. I'm more impressed with Georgia when they dick around.
It's like the mental toughness or something.
And they're just like, oh, okay, we're down by 17. And I will say this for Kirby, because I don't like building any myth or church around him. They don't lack for a sort of steadiness, a calmness in a high pressure situation. So to go back to what we started the show with on,
there you go,
like an intangible pull, that whole act like you've been there before kind of concept would really apply to them.
You know this,
anybody in the field.
I totally agree, and it's why if I had to pick, gun to my head, I'm picking Georgia Texas to play in the championship.
I'm definitely not picking that.
What I want is that is not what I want. Eddie says SEC championship game was fun though. I totally agree with you there. Blind Squirrel says I would love to see the Gunner-led Dogs defeat Texas for a third time. Interesting there. Louis says Oregon. I just can't get myself to watch them or Boise State. I don't know why. That is a you problem. Oregon is exceptionally fun to watch in every facet of the game.
The SEC is capable of the dumbest narratives possible, and the thing that would scare me more than anything about a Georgia-Texas round 3 is if Texas won, the echo chamber of stupidity I would have to hear about. Like, why do they get the national championship? We won 2 out of 3.
Well,
I would hear
that. But you know that fans
or an off season.
But you know that fans get reduced down to their most like ridiculous takes in the off season, right?
Well, we're real good at that in the South. We volunteer it. So
I'm aware. I am aware. My favorite one right now is, look, instead of you firing your coaching staff, we need you to donate money to the NIL collective. That's my new favorite one.
I think
it's great. Mike Norvell, Brian Kelly having to pay players. I think it's out of their own pockets. I think it's great. Mike Gundy. I think it's wonderful. I think it's so much fun.
I don't think Gundy's long for this industry.
I don't know why he stayed in the job for any reason at all. But that's a show for a different.
Lot of clout, and you get to play that card one time. I think was the answer.
Hasn't he played that card a bunch though?
You know what's weird is you look back on his record
and running ADs out of town.
They've waned, but they've never had a season like that.
No.
And I think that you get your one get out of jail. Todd Grantham, end of conversation.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. It's insane. Yeah, no, I agree. Off mic. You have to go far away from the mic to say that one.
No.
Yeah, right. Two losing seasons in like 20 years is impressive. The first and the last. All right. National championship game. Who are you? You got this is I'm making you do this one time. I'm not going to make you do it again. But who is playing in the national championship game?
I think that the winner of Georgia Notre Dame goes to the national title. Sorry, Indiana.
Duh. I agree with that. But.
And I'll take Oregon on the other side.
So here's what you just did. You reduced it down to Oregon versus Georgia, which I think would be probably the best game, honestly. Mm-hmm. But what you've done is you are now 1 win away from Texas, Georgia, probably.
Oh, no, I think Clemson, I mean, I don't know, man. I keep talking myself into this. Like Clemson comes out in the 2 turnovers and everything you said.
I hear you. They're 1 win. That's probably 1 win away from Texas, Georgia, because Oregon just has to beat the one. They have to beat Texas. Or you're 2 wins away from Ohio State and Georgia playing, which also I think would not do huge numbers. I don't think.
No.
Do you think it would? Okay.
Yes. Dude, that's north-south, man.
I hear you, but you can't even sell tickets right now. I think Penn State.
Also, the hype level. No, God, no. The hype level coming off of that Sugar Peach Bowl. That ended in the field goal 2 years ago.
Oh, it was great. Where was that game? It was Atlanta. I think it was Atlanta.
Okay, yeah, Peach, of course. Every game
at midnight as the clock.
Yeah. I'm
gonna take Texas. I'm gonna take Texas, Georgia, and I don't like it. I don't want it. That's not what I'm rooting for. I don't like it. I'm just telling you that there is a unfinished business. We almost got there last year. Texas has fixed their cultural problems. They've got the best defense in this tournament. They've got depth at quarterback. They've got a brilliant offensive mind. I just, for some reason, I think Texas is going to do it this year. I don't know why. It's a gut instinct thing. They could absolutely lose to Clemson. But
Oregon, I think
Notre Dame versus Ohio State, says Louis. There you go.
I'm trying to think of the best single game, and I really think I think Tennessee Ohio State has potential to be one of the best single games in the tournament.
I think Oregon Texas would be exceptional.
An Oregon Ohio State rematch would seem to play in the same way the first one did.
Mm-hmm.
A Georgia Notre Dame game, I think, would be amazing.
Mm-hmm. Penn State Georgia would be awesome.
I think what I'm actually doing is I'm not cheating, but I'm allowing for that chaos variance to occur in the 5-12 Clemson Texas or SMU Penn State, and then maybe it's a double. Maybe it is like the basketball tournament where the 11 seed gets all the way to the 16, if you will. SMU upsets Penn State. Okay, SMU Boise feels even.
SMU wins.
You end up with Georgia and SMU in the semi.
I think Oregon, Ohio State, Tennessee is great. Ohio State and Oregon is great rematch. Oregon or Ohio State versus Texas is exceptional semifinal. On the other side, Georgia Notre Dame, great. Penn State Notre Dame, great. Georgia Penn State, great. So there's opportunities to get and I don't mean great as in I'm not looking forward to Cinderella. I would love to see a Cinderella run, but generally they get TCU'd at the end of it. And I don't want that to happen in a championship setting.
And I don't think it can. It's funny to defend the system. I don't think it can.
I tend to agree with you.
I don't think you're going to have a fun SMU or even in Arizona State or something come limping into the prize fight. I don't think that's going to happen.
You cannot get hot from behind the arc and win multiple football games. You can win multiple basketball.
The physicality dictates that you can't make the magic trick happen more than once.
Yep. There you go.
Vols will do the drilling at OSU. Thank you,
Chad.
You go. Also, thank you for the Motorhead comment, Louis. I see you.
They're gonna put they're gonna commit a felony at midfield after the game. And
do you think they would plant the flag ironically? If Tennessee won, do you think someone would try and ironically?
I
bet it's come up in a meeting with Heupel.
I would trot Smokey Dog out there and just have him take a Duke, right there on the field. Someone would get so fired and fined, and it would be. But talk about the meme to end all college football memes. Smokey Dog taking a dump on the O. Holy cow. We're a classy organization, Godfrey.
And on that,
we're a classy organization. Ohio State by 10 is my official prediction.
It could, it could. I think it could be Ohio State by 3. Tennessee's pressing down the field. There's a turnover. We're done.
But I think it's 23-13 though. I think it's pretty low scoring. I'm gonna go 24-17 Ohio State. I think Texas's defense is too physical. And Clemson keeps it close, maybe a couple turnovers, but they end up winning. I think Indiana's going to play really well deep into the fourth quarter, and I think Notre Dame also too much. Each one of these games, Godfrey, it's so easy to pick the favorite to win the game, but we know full well.
All right, then pick the upset right now.
I don't.
One upset.
I don't.
Go. I'm going SMU.
I'll go with you and say SMU because James Franklin will screw up the end of the game. So that's it.
Just saying, their big game history is well documented, and SMU is. I will say this: they don't play as scared as people would assume.
And they got lots of weapons, lots of speed. They got a good field goal kicker. There's reasons to like them. Good offensive plan. If they're in a close game, Penn State will pucker up just like Ohio State will. It will get real tense, real tight.
See, not just as Clemson, and this has just become too hipster popular in the last 48 hours.
Is picking Clemson?
Yeah.
I think it's the same thing picking Notre Dame over Georgia. I think the same thing's happening.
No,
people are trying to be contrarian.
Team.
I agree with you, but they're trying to be contrarian just for the sake of it. So we'll see.
We didn't know Clemson was going to be in this thing 10 days ago.
That's a fair point. All right. At 38 Godfrey, ML Rose, if you're in Nashville, great place to get burgers and craft beer, of course. You got Split Zone Duo. You got all kinds of other stuff with Godfrey. You can catch them all over the place as well. Washington Post, Who Killed College Football as well. Please rate, review, subscribe, all the great stuff. Enjoy the games over the weekend. We will be back next week before Christmas. We'll have an episode for you on Monday, so we do appreciate you guys. Rate, review, and subscribe. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a hater. For Steven, I am Braden. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the games. We'll talk to you next time.